Time now for the Educated Retirement Show with your host, Jay Kaplan. Jay discusses reverse mortgages and can answer your questions at 951-922-3532. Call lines are open at 951-922-3532. And now, here's Jay.
And now, here's Jay. But I think somebody already said that. In any case, though, was that not a great half hour with Phil Walker? I just appreciate what he says so much. And he knows what to say. I don't always, but, I wish I were that easy to come up with the right answers for those people who object to reverse mortgages. And he shows how easily it becomes a strategy that is almost absolutely necessary. So we are here on the Educated Retirement, KMET 1490 AM, and we're going to continue with our nostalgia birthdays. We're not going to continue, we're actually going to start them. And that's with Robert Mitchum, who was born on the 6th, oh, that's today. And he was born 1917 and left us in 1997. Robert Charles Derman Mitchum was an American actor, director, author, composer, and singer. Yeah, he was I'm going to show it to you again, and I'll show it to you again before the show is over. I can't get over this. It's got such a cool back thing. And of course, the front is supposed to look like some of his stuff that he did with, what's her name? You know what I mean by what's her name. She was in Macau, and I'll know that as Russell. Jane Russell, yeah. Anyway, he rose to fame for starring in classic film noir and acting generally as the anti-hero that was prevalent in film during the 50s and 60s. Robert was born in Connecticut, just like my wife, to his mother, a Norwegian immigrant and sea captain's daughter, and to his father, an Irish shipyard railroad worker who was crushed to death in a rail yard accident in South Carolina in 1919. Ouch. His mother was awarded a government pension and remarried years later. As a child, Mitchum was known as a prankster and often involved in fist fights and mischief. When he was 12, his mother sent him to live with her parents, where he was promptly expelled from school for scuffling with the principal. He moved in with his older sister in New York's Hell's Kitchen, and after being expelled from high school, he left his sister and traveled throughout the country, similar to Darren McGavin, who played Kolchak. Anyway, hopping on railroad cars and taking a number of jobs like ditch digging and professional boxing. He said that at 14 in Georgia, he was arrested for vagrancy and put in a local chain gang, and later went back to the road on to California. He arrived in Long Beach and became a ghostwriter for an astrologer. He joined the Players Guild of Long Beach, working as an occasional stagehand and occasional bit player, and wrote several short pieces that were performed by the group. After getting married, he found steady employment, that marriage can do that to you, as a machine operator with Lockheed Aircraft, but suffered a nervous breakdown due to job-related stress, resulting in temporary blindness. Wow. Pretty wild life. He then sought work as a film actor, starting with small parts in westerns, and wound up signing a contract with RKO Radio Pictures, therefore beginning an acting career. In 1948, after several successful films, Mitchum was arrested for possession of marijuana. Boy, things have changed, which was part of a sting operation designed to capture other Hollywood parties as well. He spent 43 days in Castaic Prison Farm. As he described, it was like Palm Springs, but without the riffraff. Okay. And life photographers were permitted to take photos of him mopping up in a prison uniform. Let me show you some pictures. Let me start with the overall big picture. And I'm sure you all know who I'm talking about, although there are too many Roberts in the film industry, and I'll talk about that in a minute too. But of course, you know who this is. And here's some mopping pictures. These are a little different. I think this is the only one to really show. Here he is doing his famous mop-up work. And I think you can tell he probably did a good job with the mopping altogether, because as I understand, the floors did become clean after he did this. So let me just get the mop in the picture there too. Okay, here's a couple more pictures of him hanging out with bars, and I have another one. And I'm not sure what this was from later in his career, I'm sure, but there he is. I like the picture. I like the wood in the background and all that good stuff. So what I like is what I like. So the conviction was later overturned after being exposed as a setup. Mitchum was also a singer. His voice was used often instead of a professional to sing in the films such as in River of No Return and The Night of the Hunter. Wow, I didn't know that, but we got to take a quick look. I mean, we got to, right? We got to. Okay. Mitchum starred in over 65 films and was nominated for 1 Academy Award for Best Supporting Role in Story of G.I. Joe, and won the Golden Globe Cecil B. DeMille Award in 1992. Short list of his films: 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, which I remember was on television every 30 seconds or so when I was young. And that was director Marvin Leroy, co-starred Spencer Tracy, Van Johnson, Robert Walker. Crossfire, which I know we showed you a little while ago. I can't find it. What a great film that was. Or that was also nominated for a bunch of Academy Awards, including Best Film of the Year. It had to do with prejudices in and out of the armed services. Co-starred Robert Ryan, Robert Young, and there we go with the too many Roberts again. Gloria Graham, who did she win the supporting actress? Not sure, but it was originally about prejudice against blacks, and it was changed for the screen to prejudice against people who were Jewish. I'm not sure what the studio thought. Perhaps they thought that, I don't know what they thought. The one was too explosive. Out of the Past, a great film noir, and we watched it not too long ago. Superbly crafted. One scene never forgotten. Somebody said that. Anyway, that is a noir classic. Jacques Tourneur, who did some of the Val Lewton horror films too, like I believe Jacques did Cat People, amongst others. Co-starring Rhonda Fleming and Kirk Douglas, The Racket, 1951, directed by John Cromwell. Do we have that? I didn't think. Oh, we do. We does have that. And there it is. And that's Robert Mitchum, Lisbeth Scott, Robert Ryan, and Ray Collins. And Ray Collins, you know, came to Hollywood with what's his name in the from the Mercury Theater.
Orson Welles.
Orson Welles. There we go. Anyway, directed by John Cromwell. What is Nicholas Ray's name in here too?
They were co-directors.
Co-directors, and then I have and Sherman taught 3 co-directors.
Yeah, there were 3.
Well, there's all right. Well, whatever. Was also anyway, River of No Return, which seemed a few years ago was on Turner Classics like every week. Not my favorite of his films, certainly not my favorite of Marilyn Monroe's, but you know, there you go. Otto Preminger, Rory Calhoun, and the singing voice of Mitchum. Night of the Least You Forget. Night of the Hunter, I think, is probably the best film he was ever in, 1955. The only film ever directed by Charles Lawton. I mean, this is a great one, and this was, I mean, amazing. Look at some of these pictures of him with it says love on his hand, if you can see it on that side. It says hate on this side. And that was with, of course, Shelley Winters, Lillian Gish, as an older person. And Shelley Winters, Peter Graves had a very small part at the beginning. He's, of course, brother of the Thing from Another World. Cape Fear, 1962, which, and you know, I really like Martin Scorsese, but this one was better. Directed by J. Lee Thompson, co-starring Gregory Peck and Polly Bergen. And there you go. You can see both if you want. I give everybody permission to see both, but this one I think is a must. Okay. And Farewell, My Lovely, directed by Dick Richards, story by Raymond Chandler, who had a birthday a week or two ago, co-starring Charlotte Rampling, who is also going to be in the new version of Dune, Harry Dean Stanton and John Ireland, and was nominated for one Academy Award. Do we have anything like that? Okay. The Big Sleep, 1997, which of course we all know. This was, this is the remake we're talking about. Okay. Here, of course, is the original one, which he wasn't in, but still very good. And this was directed by, what's his name? My goodness, how come he's such a famous name? There's no reason for me to remember somebody that's so famous. You know I don't. He was the he directed this. He directed Treasure of Sierra Madre. He directed so many others. He was also in Chinatown and played the chewing gum man. Anyway, The Big Sleep, story by Raymond Chandler, co-starred James Stewart, Richard Boone, and Oliver Reed. And Oliver Reed is, I'm sorry to say, is gone. Another one that went too quick. Andy Warhol, he joined us.
Oh, wait, aren't you finished?
Oh, you know, we found a couple others that he was in. Jim Jarmusch, who we talked about on his birthday. Is it Jim Jarmusch's best movie? I don't know. I should have to look at it again. A masterpiece, as somebody said. The Chicago Reader, mysterious and daring from Newsweek. And there's that. Jim Jarmusch, of course, more well known for Stranger Than Paradise. And here's a good one. I don't think this is a great film, but I really think it was, I enjoy it. And this is Macau, and there he is, and with Bendix, Jane Russell. That's the other person I was thinking of. That looks, and we said looks like a picture on his CD. And William Bendix, and Gloria Graham. So there. Anyway, so let's get on to Andy. Andy joined us August 6, 1928, and left us in 1997, a little bit too soon. Do we have, here's a picture of him as a youngin'. And it's hard to see the Studio 54 version, but there he is. And he's getting a little more adult here. And he's getting a little more adult here. And here is a statue. I'm not sure. I think I talk about it here. But let me show it to you now. There you go. I'll talk about it a bit. And here's another picture. Now, this is his own magazine. This was his own publication. And we've got stacks of these, and I think they're really worth having from a cultural point of view. Not that I have any culture, but I can pretend I do when I have these around. So there he is there. Okay. Andy was an American artist, film director, and producer, and was a leading figure in the visual art movement known as pop art. You don't happen to have a can of Campbell's beans, do you? Andy was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to working class immigrants. His father worked in a coal mine. In the third grade, Andy had I don't know how to pronounce this. Sydenham chorea, which is a nervous system disease that caused involuntary movements of the extremities, believed to be complicated by scarlet fever. At times, when he was confined to his bed, he drew, listened to the radio, and collected pictures of movie stars. When he was 13, his father died in an accident. So we've got both him and Mitchum's father dying in accidents. After high school, he studied art and served as art director of the Student Art magazine, earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts in pictorial design, then moved to New York City and began a career in magazine illustration. He did work for Glamour, Vogue, and Harper's Bazaar magazines, as well as book jackets and greeting cards, and of course he had then turned into his own publication later. And Warhol was dedicated to commercial and advertising art, which a lot of people were not then, and it really made a name for himself. He was an early user of the silkscreen printing process as a technique for making paintings. He used tracing paper and ink as part of his printmaking process, as well as tracing photographs. Not only designed work for magazines, but record covers as well. And of course, a lot of lithographs and a lot of paintings that were sold as art itself. Warhol exhibited his artwork in galleries, one of which was highlighting the infamous Campbell's soup cans. And probably don't need to show that to you. I could find a picture, but you know, he continued to make paintings of mushroom clouds, electric chairs, stars like Marilyn Monroe, Elvis, Marlon Brando, Elizabeth Taylor, Troy Donahue, and Muhammad Ali. We made paintings of those. I think you can remember the silk green kind of dots and things that he became famous for. Using Dick Tracy comic strips, he designed a window for the Lord and Taylor stores, which I forgot they did exist. He opened his studio, The Factory, and gathered about him writers, musicians, underground celebrities, and other artists. In 1968, Warhol was shot, along with an art critic, by a radical feminist author, Valerie Solanas. She was convinced that they were conspiring to steal her work. The critic had only minor injuries. Warhol barely survived injuries, leaving him with complications that affected his life and art years later. The attacker was arrested after she turned herself into the police. And he became more entrepreneurial in the 70s and concentrated on rich patrons, not me, for portrait commissions like the Shah of Iran and his wife, Mick Jagger, John Lennon, Diana Ross, and Brigitte Bardot. He also founded Interview magazine and socialized at various night spots in New York like the Studio 54. He was known as the White Mole of Union Square, as he was regarded quiet and shy. Did we have any other magazines you wanted to show? That's just, geez, I can hardly carry it. It's like a phone book. Remember phone books? There you go. Look how thick that is. That's another one. Uh, Here's another one, and that's all right. One more. We're getting thinner. At least I can hold them. John Malkovich. Did you ever see Seeing John Malkovich? John, did you ever see Being John Malkovich? Whatever.
Michael Fox.
No, I think I missed that one.
That is so strange. You should look for it. I mean, it was a big hit out there. It was pretty strange.
Michael J. Fox.
Michael J. Fox. This will be the last one I show. Okay. I mean, like I said, we've got stacks. Warhol died in 1987 from sudden post-operative irregular heartbeat. His will dictated that most of his estate would go to create a foundation dedicated to the advancement of the visual arts, which is now the Andy Warhol Foundation for the Visual Arts. He had so many possessions that it took Sotheby's 8 days to auction after his death. Wow. So let me remind you, you are listening to the Educated Retirement Radio here on your home planet, 1490 KMET AM radio, the Mighty Met. And remember to call me. Don't forget, 866-955-2233, 866-955-2233, or www.drheckham.com, or email me at bestloantoday@gmail.com, bestloantoday@gmail.com. And we're at the bottom of the hour, nothing bottomless about Alton Brown, who was born July 30th, 1962. And before I even knew we were going to talk about him, I was just thinking and mentioning that, you know what, he really has talent. This guy really dug into imagination to make a very, very, very entertaining show, whether you cared about what he was making or not. Sometimes I think he got a little too involved in this stuff, but who cared? He was. Oh, here's another look at him. Looking awful sporty. This is probably, both of these photographs are probably older because he has a new show, a couple of new shows. One is, well, we'll talk about that in a minute, but he's got very little hair these days. He's got a new show called The Good Eats, and he's got Good Eats Reloaded, which shows him back then and now. He's also went on the road with a show. I don't know how that went. I haven't seen him doing that kind of thing since, but that was something he did for a bit there. Alton Crawford Brown Jr. is an American TV food show presenter, chef, author, actor, cinematographer, and musician. I mean, I don't know about the musician, but we'll find out more. He was born in Los Angeles, lived and was raised in Georgia. His father was a media executive who was not killed in an accident, owner of a radio station and publisher of a newspaper in Cleveland, Georgia. He died on Alton's last day of the 6th grade from an apparent suicide. Well, that's almost worse than an accident, so I spoke too fast. After studying film at the University of Georgia in the late 1980s, Alton was the cinematographer. Okay, that explains some things. For several music videos, including for rock band REM. Wow! I didn't know that. He was a director. Brown was dissatisfied with the quality of cooking shows airing on television, so he set out to produce his own show. In preparation, he enrolled in the New England Culinary Institute and graduated in 1997. He was a poor science student in high school and college, but he focused on the subject to understand the underlying processes of cooking. Many times the show Good Eats featured Brown building makeshift cooking devices in order to point out that many of them are simply fancified hardware store items. Good Eats, the name of that show, was nominated for the Best TV Good Journalism Award by the James Beard Foundation in the year 2000. The show was also awarded 2006 Peabody Award. I mean, what imagination he had, and he really, I'm sure he knew it was going to be a hit, and so entertaining. Brown was once a motorcycling enthusiast and is an airplane pilot owning 2 planes. Well, he can afford them. He also collects vintage watches and has written several books. Airplane. He had one show, and I don't know whether it's on, but where he motorcycled across the United States. And I remember one, he had a brain sandwich somewhere, but so be it. Short list of Alton Brown TV shows. Good Eats was started in 1999 and is still current. Well, you know, Good Eats Reloaded has been on since 2018, and that's the show I was speaking of before, where he had original shows and then went back and forth to show what he had learned since and to show how much hair he lost. Cutthroat Kitchen host, 2013 to 2017. Iron Chef America commentator, 2005 to 2018. So good for him. And the last, I think the last of our birthdays is M. Night Shyamalan, who joined us August 6, 1970. Just a kid, as you probably know. Here's a picture of M. Night. And here is another more dramatic one. Oh, you can see we were running out of black ink, but we fixed that since. But that's okay. There he is. And so M. Night is an American filmmaker and actor and is known for making original films with contemporary supernatural plots, which means weird stuff. He was born in India. His parents were both doctors. They immigrated to the U.S. when he was 6 weeks old. He was raised in Penn Valley, Pennsylvania. Growing up, he attended mostly private schools. Anyway, he decided to become a filmmaker once he began to use his father's Super 8 camera. Though his father wanted him to follow in the family practice of medicine. You know, so many directors, successful ones, we have seen started with their Super 8 camera. Super 8s didn't come out until after I was adult. Otherwise, I might be a film director too. This has nothing to do with it except for the name of it, which is Super 8. J.J. Abrams, one of his better films, I gotta admit. But just thought that that was interesting showing that to you. By the time he was 17, he had made 45 home videos with that Super 8. Did you know that among Shyamalan's favorite movies are Godfather, Jaws, what a surprise, The Exorcist, Being There, and Rebecca, which is definitely one of, let me see which is Jaws, The Exorcist, and Rebecca are 3 of my favorites also. And one of his favorite directors is Alfred Hitchcock, who did, of course, Rebecca. But of all of the Hitchcock films, Rebecca has to be the least, I'm not going to say supernatural, but, you know, let's just say the least of what we think of as Hitchcock films. He almost wrote an Indiana Jones movies, and M. Night has a fear of flying and mostly shoots his films close to home in Philadelphia, where he has a 1937 Georgian revival house, part of a 125-acre estate. The exception was his latest film, Old, as it required a tropical island location. Of course, he could have taken a boat there, and Old is not out yet. Is it? I don't believe so, no. He turned down the opportunity to direct movies from the Harry Potter series, something he should not have done. Anyway, a short list of M. Night Shyamalan films: Sixth Sense, which we have, but I don't have it out here. Unbreakable, which I really liked. I really liked this film. It didn't come out well as far as the critics. I have a different idea about it. I liked it. Still like it. Maybe thinking it's his best film. Starring Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson. Signs came out in 2002, starring Mel Gibson and Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin Phoenix doing one of his normal great acting jobs. And I remember more than anything, there was a couple of scenes that showed aliens, right?
Yeah.
Which was really cool. And I remember the posters for it showed, I think it showed clouds with that. I don't know, but it was pretty neat. So, Signs was 2002. The Village, 2004. Bryce Dallas Howard. Joaquin Phoenix, again, Sigourney Weaver, William Hurt, Brendan Gleeson, great actor. And not that the others aren't. And I liked it, as I also liked The Happening, starring Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel. Neither of those movies did that well, and The Last Airbender seemed to do even worse in 2010 and starred Noah Ringer and Dev Patel. So there for M. Night Shyamalan. So let's get into some honorable mentions as we try to wrap up here. Lucille Ball, August 6, 1911, earned her wings in 1989. And, of course, I don't need to remind you what she looks like, but, just for the fun of it, there we go. Because her life is actually a lot more than I Love Lucy, and a lot more than the long trailer. But Lucy starred in about 20 films, and, I would have thought it was more than that. And, of course, known for I Love Lucy, nominated for 12 Emmy Awards for I Love Lucy and The Lucy Show, and won 3 of them. She also received the Governor's Award in 1989. She helped Star Trek become a cultural icon, and that is a good story. Remember Desilu production? At the time, she was the head of Desilu Productions, Desilu Productions, when Gene Roddenberry approached the company with an idea for the plot and the show. Even though the board members were against it, she stood by the show, and that was that. The pilot, The Cage, was shot and on a massive budget, and so became the campy science fiction series with a huge following even to this day. Other shows that Desilu was well known for were The Untouchables, Mission Impossible, and Mannix. Anyway, and again, on this day in history, we have NASA Nelly returning, and I'm listening. I don't hear those retro rockets. We may have to... Okay. And why don't you pull those things up here for me? Okay, thank you. NASA, Nelly, what are you going to tell us about now?
Well, this is back by popular demand. We've had so many requests for the repeat of this story. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident, one of my favorite stories. On February 1st and 2nd of 1959, Russian hikers died in the northern Ural Mountains in uncertain circumstances. The experienced group were all from the Ural Polytechnical Institute. During the night, something caused them to cut their way out of their tents and flee the campsite while inadequately dressed for the heavy snowfall and sub-zero temperatures. Each member of the group were exceptional hikers with ski tour experience and were to receive the highest certification available in the Soviet Union on their return from the 190-mile hike. The route was designed by the group and approved by the Sverdlovsk Route Commission. The group of 10 arrived by train in the early hours of January 25th. They took a truck to a small village and spent the night, purchased and ate loaves of bread, as recorded in their journals. The next day, they began their trip. One member became ill and turned back as he was unable to walk, leaving the team at 9 members. Diaries and cameras were found around their last campsite and showed that they lost their direction because of snowstorms and decreasing visibility and decided to set up camp on the side of a mountain rather than a forested area. They had planned to telegram their club as soon as they arrived to their destination, but when there was no word for several days after the estimated time of arrival, relatives demanded a rescue operation of students and teachers. Then the army and militia followed with planes and helicopters. The searchers found the group's badly damaged tent half torn down with cuts open from the inside, and the hikers' belongings and shoes were left behind. In time, their bodies were found, some many feet from each other with odd, severe injuries, some comparable to car crashes, suggesting they scattered in a panic to save themselves from a calamity of some sort. There was speculation that the indigenous Mansi people, reindeer herders, attacked and murdered the hikers. This proved to be untrue. The nature of the fatal injuries would not have been caused by humans and not even consistent with animal attacks either, as there were no signs of tracks. To make it more puzzling, some levels of radiation were found on their clothing. Negatives from the hikers' cameras, along with diaries and journals, were released as late as 2009. A possible conclusion was an avalanche or hurricane, but the location did not have the signs of certain debris patterns of an avalanche. It was reported that there were no such conditions at that time of year, and the experienced hikers would not to camp in the path of a possible avalanche. Another idea was infrared sound wind, creating a vortex that can create panic or military tests, possible explosions scaring the group. To add to the confusion, another group of hikers south of the incident reported strange orange spheres in the sky that same night. The negatives revealed a mysterious clue, an odd figure on one of the last frames shot. It showed standing near a tree a huge creature resembling a Yeti, alias Bigfoot, and the last few words in a diary translated, "Now we know the snowman is real."
Wow. I can understand why that's such a popular story. Now that to me does look like a Yeti or a Bigfoot. I mean, I'm not sure what else it could be. But so be it. And, you know, I don't know. I have a feel. I know there were military tests going on, right? So if anything, the military tests could have, and that's why they showed up like orbs, because sometimes photography is like that, and sometimes they are real orbs. But in any case, I think that the military experimentation scared the Yeti, and the Yeti went nuts, or decided to eat some people instead, to bolster his diet. As you know, they like to bolster their diet. Anyway, what else happened? What happened this day in history? Alice in Wonderland was released July 28th, 1951 in New York. All right. That's, guess whose that one is? It's animated from Disney, and a great one. And of course, there is the newer one with Tim Burton, that Tim Burton directed with our man
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp. Oh, I really enjoyed this one too. And so this is the 13th feature film produced by Walt Disney Productions. Disney considered it a disappointment on its initial release, which led him to show it on the television as one of the first episodes of his show Disneyland, which, boy, I watched every whatever night it was on. It was so successful on that show that it was re-released in theaters and proved to become one of the biggest cult classics in animation. So, Disney knew what he was doing when it came to marketing. The film was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Scoring of a Musical Picture, but lost to An American in Paris. So the very unbirthday sequence inspired by Mad Tea Party, Shining Teacup Ride, was a teacup ride in Fantasyland at Disneyland, which is still in operation and was one of the original rides in the park when it first opened in 1955. And then we talked about the other version. The Tim Burton version was 2010, and Depp is the Mad Hatter, followed by Alice Through the Looking Glass, also directed by Tim Burton. And who played Alice? That's all right. Let me see that
I
one.
can't pronounce her name.
Yeah, she's been in a few. She was in a horror film, a good one by
Guillermo del Toro.
Guillermo del Toro. There's that book. And these are some of the visuals from there. Now, if you can... Here's a visual of Tim Burton you can't forget. Right? I'm just going to randomly take a look. That's too complicated in a way. And there's, again, showing the filming and another picture. And of course, Johnny again over there. Okay, so the Lighthouse Act was signed in 1789. It was on August 7th that Congress passed the resolution for the establishment and support of lighthouses, beacons, buoys, and public piers. The nationwide lighthouse community continued to keep the flame of that heritage by celebrating on August 7th as National Lighthouse Day. As America continues its technological process, it becomes easy to forget the serenity of pre-industrial establishments such as lighthouses. Of course, you don't see that in many of the films that have been made since then. Lighthouse groups usually offer the general public tours, cruises, and presentation. Okay, thank you. I'll be ready in a minute. That pay tribute to lighthouses and their grand history. The first American lighthouse was built on the West Coast, called Alcatraz in 1985, and 1958. Boy, that's a joke. 1854. Now, we can continue with this if we have time this week or next week, because we got some great lighthouse film movies. But I wanted to start like a comedy or a joke section of the show about, the last 15 minutes or so of every show. And we're going to start off with a real treat. This is a live person. This is the Terror from Fullerton. Bruce Cooper, who is performing on radio right now, and I don't know what he's got, but let's give him a shot at. Let's give him I know he's always funny, so that's not a problem. Go ahead, Bruce, please.
Jay, how are you?
I'm doing fine, I think, and you? I think I'm doing better now that you're here, because I know you'll be good for a minute or whatever.
I've been trying to come up with a clean joke, and I found one, and
oh my God, no, yeah.
I know. But anyway, let me try this one out. 3 men were in a boat off the coast, and the boat was a sailboat, and they lost track of time, and the boat moved away from the harbor. No one realized it till finally they couldn't see shore. They started to get upset, and they had no way of getting back. There was no wind up or anything, but they all had vests on. One of the people in the boat said, "Well, I'm a doctor, and you probably need to leave me on the ship or on the boat in case something medically has to go on." And then some other guy spoke up and said, "Well, I'm an engineer and I know about navigation, and you'll need me." And the third guy was a lawyer, and he hemmed and hawed around, and they pressured him, and he said, "Okay, screw you." And he jumped overboard with the vest, and right away a bunch of sharks surrounded him in a cordon, and it appeared they were guiding him in toward the shore. Well, time went on, and finally these guys were brought back in by rescue, and they got a hold of the lawyer, and they said, "What went on with you? It looks like those guys surrounded you." And the lawyer said, "Professional courtesy." And when I was sitting here thinking earlier about calling in, I was thinking of other stuff. We all have stuff that, as kids, that we remember and stuff, and I think that could bring certain stuff with humor up. And but I had an Uncle Eddie who was he's been gone since 1976, and I grew up in New York, and he was there with his wife, and he came out here to California with me, but he was a funny guy. But that's for another time. How's the weather with you?
It's fine, and I know it's hard to tell the jokes without a live audience or a way to get feedback, but it's wonderful. And we're going to try to do this every week to some degree, and if we get more call-ins, that'll be even better. And I'll have some other jokes, that I've got written down. So thanks very, very much. And we've got about 2 or 3 minutes, but you don't need to hang on unless you want to. But
yeah, I'll hang on. You have anything to say about the weekend?
I'd sure like to get downtown LA to the Cecil Hotel. That's where Uncle Eddie was living, right? In the last several years.
His last one was the Knickerbocker off of Hollywood. But yeah, no,
time.
he was in several different ones. He was an independent guy, but we should practice his
techniques. And didn't he drop chairs out of the window from a high floor from the Cecil?
When he was moving, and he wanted me to take a couple of chairs back home to Fullerton because his daughter lived there, and when I went to college, I lived with him. And what he wanted to do was, and they were metal chairs, he wanted to drop them out the window and expected me to catch them from 4 stories up. And they came out of that window like projectiles.
You to catch them, or was he looking for a way to flatten?
No, I wouldn't go anywhere near them, but they bounced in the street, and I'm not sure how many of them were worth anything after he got done with them, but he was a really funny guy, and he passed a lot of that on to his family, whether they wanted to hear it or not.
Yeah. Didn't he have Christmas lights and things all over the room too? Or am I
Yes, he did. Yes, he did in the room, and when they first started coming out with 99-cent stores, he bought these Chinese
Okay.
like
We got
lantern
1
things.
minute, and then the hook is going to come out and pull us off stage.
Okay, well maybe we'll just we'll stop here, and I will wish you the best of luck. And
Well, thank
I don't
you
know
always.
what to say.
And it was good to have you over yesterday, and hope to see you in a day or two, or talk to you at least tomorrow. And
Yes.
this is our Frolics from Fullerton, who is always one of, if not the funniest guy I know. Bruce, you don't mind if I say your name on the radio, right?
No, you can say it.
That's the famous Bruce Cooper of Fullerton. And
Right.
with that, I will sign off. And as usual, I will say a couple of quick things, such as I confess I was born at a very early age. And, living in the lap of luxury isn't bad, except that you never know when luxury is going to stand up. And with that, I'll save a pickle joke till next week. But thank you so much, everyone, for being with us the last 2 hours. Thanks to you, Sean. Thanks to all the listeners. Take care of yourself, and I hope to see you and talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Educated Retirement Show with Jay Kaplan. Tune in every Friday at 3 p.m. to learn more about your mortgage and reverse mortgages. And don't forget, each show is also podcasted on the KMET